Kansas at Kansas State. It was billed as Tuesday night's biggest game. Two top 15 teams, in-state rivals. It was the school that has owned the Big 12 for nearly 2 decades, if not forever, against the team that was picked to finish dead last in the Big 12 this season, but has turned into the biggest surprise and best story in the sport. Final score, Kansas State 83, Kansas 82. It was in overtime. Incredible game, incredible scene. It's the new biggest win of Jerome Tang's head coaching career. Deadleg, I know you watched it. What'd you make of the result and the images and the sounds that we got inside Bramlage on Tuesday night?
Great stuff. College basketball season. We're in the thick of the regular season. I love games like this, love scenes like this, midweek, hyped game. Also felt a little unusual to have like a high-profile Kansas game tip at 7 Eastern as opposed to normally, middle of the country, Central Time Zone. Usually that's a 9 Eastern tip. So nice and early there. And what what a showing by K-State for that fan base in particular, which is just it's on occasion, every so often, it's picked off a nice win against Kansas, but Kansas has owned this rivalry. I'll pay respect to the Sunflower Showdown and call it a rivalry, but this is as lopsided and one-sided as almost any we have in college sports between two high major programs there. KU had won more than 85% of its past 80 meetings against Kansas State. It had won 22 of its past 25. Kansas State hadn't logged a big win of this nature, top 5 level in 5 seasons. And for the 4th time this season, K-State was taken to overtime or took a game to overtime, depending on your perspective, and emerged victorious. So Jerome Tang has something special going there. And I'm going to play, courtesy of Jeff Goodman, who is on hand there. You should be able to hear this. I did not test this with Nada beforehand, but you should be able to hear it.
Great.
This is 40 seconds long, went a bit viral on Twitter late on Tuesday night, but I love this. Fans have flooded the floor. Jerome Tang has taken to the microphone. It's not like they just won a conference championship in their final home game of the regular season. First year, middle of January, he addresses the crowd. Here's what it sounded like.
This is about us winning. It is amazing what you can accomplish when you do it out of a motive of love and joy and passion. And I told y'all, we'll get you one court storming. From here on out, expect to win.
So good, man. So good. I'll get you one court storming. Is Jerome Tang trying to tell these kids they can't ever storm the floor again? Because good luck to all that. What are your thoughts on Tang's approach to all this? He spoke about it multiple times this week, and don't make it about Kansas. Don't make it about how much we hate them. Make it about how much we love this program. It is an interesting approach. You don't hear it often. He's a big man of faith, GP. He spoke about his faith recently when he was even asked about any potential job openings at Texas and being a candidate. And he didn't outright say, like, I'm going to be here at Kansas State. I'm going to do what God tells me to do, how he guides me every single day. So he's wired a little bit differently there. And whatever, the stuff he is made of, it's immediately had an impact here, and we've mentioned this on the pod, but just to reiterate, especially after last night, 16-2 after being picked last in the Big 12, Jerome Tang, as we sit here on January 18, your national front runner for Coach of the Year.
I love it. I love everything about it, especially the part out of not worrying about hating something else as much as loving what we are. It's a fresh approach for college athletics. We hear about these intense rivalries, Alabama, Auburn, Ohio State, Michigan. In my neck of the woods, Ole Miss and Mississippi State. And one of the things I found interesting in recent years is that once Lane Kiffin became the head coach at Ole Miss football, and Mike Leach, the late Mike Leach, was the head coach at Mississippi State, those two men were friends. And they didn't badmouth each other. They didn't try to pretend that each other didn't exist. In fact, at one point, Lane Kiffin said, while his in-state rival was being coached by Mike Leach, and Lane Kiffin is known as an offensive coach, obviously, he said, I think Mike Leach, I'm paraphrasing here, but some version of, I think Mike Leach is the best offensive coach in college football. Can you imagine? Like, that's the Ole Miss football coach saying that about the Mississippi State football coach. And Lane's perspective on that was, we don't have to pretend the other school sucks or the other coach sucks or that anything like that, to enjoy ourselves. Like, let's just believe in ourselves and acknowledge, like, hey, Mike Leach is great. Mississippi State's good. And we'll, and then we'll play them at the end of every regular season. We'll try to beat them, but we don't have to hate them. And to see that now manifest in the state of Kansas, at least from Jerome Tang's perspective, I love it. I don't know if 100% of Kansas State fans are on board with it. Like, they've hated Kansas their whole life and they want to continue to do it. But what Jerome said leading up to this game falls more in line with my life perspective than the alternative. And so perhaps that's why I can appreciate it. Like, hey, we don't have to pretend Kansas sucks or Kansas is overrated or Bill Self is a clown. We can acknowledge, like, KU is one of the great basketball programs in this country. Bill Self is amazing. And these are my words, not Jerome's. This is just what I took from it. Kansas is great. Bill Self is great. We're going to try to beat them every time we play them, but we're not trying to win a Kansas State championship here. We're trying to win Big 12 titles and go to Final Fours and win a national championship, and we don't have to hate Kansas to do that. So I love that perspective, even if I know if you put a poll up, 100% of Kansas State fans would not fall in line with it. As for the moment last night, beautiful. I mean, that is college basketball. As I've said a million times, if you just focus what happens between the lines, college basketball cannot compete with the NBA. Like, the NBA is just, I mean, they're the best players in the world. They're shot makers, shot creators. The on-court product at the NBA, if you watch an NBA game and then watch a college basketball game, it looks like two different sports completely. But what the NBA can't match with college basketball is that scene last night. They can't match they don't have student sections. They don't have court stormings. They don't have Greg Popovich standing on the scores table addressing the crowd after the game. The NBA can't replicate that. And I know that there's probably a Kansas fan somewhere saying, oh my God, congratulations on winning a game in January. It looked like you just won the national. Who cares? Like, enjoy it. Have fun when it's time to have fun. This program was in a bad place in recent years. They hired someone who'd never been a head coach at the Division I level, picked dead last by everybody in the Big 12. And then when you wake up on January 18th, or more accurately, when you go to bed on January 17th, you were tied for first in the Big 12 standings and coming off of a win over the reigning national champions and your in-state rival, and coming off of a win that was created in electric, an alley-oop game winner. What? Marquise Noel to Keontae Johnson. And that was beautiful. And brilliant. I mean, Bill Self gets a lot of credit for out of bounds plays, after timeout play, as he should. He's like maybe the best, one of the best, and perhaps the best at it. And Jerome drawing that up, recognizing that Jalen Wilson was going to try to deny the entry pass to Keontae Johnson, and they moved everybody else away from the basket so there's no weak side help. And when Jalen cheated just a little bit to try to deny that inbounds pass that he assumed was coming, Keontae spins on him, Marquise Noel throws it up, alley-oop for the game winner. Kansas doesn't get a shot off at the buzzer. I just thought the game was spectacular. The scene was amazing, and that is the best of college basketball. What you saw last night inside Bramlett is the best of this sport that we talk about nonstop.
Yeah, shouts to our buddy Rob Doster, who took the trip down to the Octagon of Doom, and he had never been. And I was talking to him earlier on Tuesday. I was like, man, I just hope you get a really good game. And yeah, if you get a scene where Kansas State wins, like, that's awesome. So I'm really thrilled for him that he was able to see that up close and personal and experience that, because that's one of those arenas that I've never been to. I'm guessing that you haven't, but maybe you were at CBS. You got out there in 2006, so you were there for the Beasley year. Maybe you got out there. That would have been the only year I figure you would have gone. Have you ever been to K-State?
I've been to K-State. I don't know if it was the Michael Beasley year. For some reason, I remember Jacob Pullen. Those might overlap. Okay. I just know Frank Martin was the coach because I remember talking to Frank. Kansas State won. whoever they played. I don't remember. It was probably Kansas.
Of course.
And I just remember Frank saying, I told you this place is special. Like, because it is an incredible scene. Like when the team is good and the place is packed, that's I don't know that it makes many lists of top 5 college basketball venues in the country, but if you're in it and it's great, it's great.
Yeah. Speaking of Frank, last time Kansas State started 16-2 was the 2009-2010 season. Ironically, if you want to even call it ironic, they did lose to Kansas both those times that season, actually 3 times. And when they played them at home, they lost 81-79. They went at home last night, 83-82. That team did have Jacob Pullen, Dennis Clemente, Jamar Samuels, Dominique Sutton. That was the K-State team that Frank Martin took all the way to the Elite Eight, where it lost to Butler, where Parrish is propagating the lie that he had some sort of eye contact and conversation with Brad Stevens.
We shared a moment. That night.
So 2010 was the last time Kansas State started 16-2. That team wound up getting a 2 seed. We'll see if this one can also get a 2 seed. Listen, it's 5-1 in the best league in America, and right now the Big 12 standings read as follows: Kansas, Iowa State, K-State atop at 5-1, and then behind them, and we'll get to Texas and Iowa State in just a second here. Texas has 2 losses, TCU has 2 losses, and then can't forget about Baylor. It was able to get a road win against Texas Tech, and it's 3-3 there. I do want to mention real quick Keontae Johnson. Yes, that oop was awesome. I don't remember the game. K-State fans, you're going to know it right off the top of your head if you're listening or watching. But there was another Noel to Keontae oop like 2-3 games ago. So
yes.
They've done this in multiple. There've been multiple times where they've been involved in a close game, and that connection has been emphatic to help guide Kansas State to a win. Noel actually didn't really even have that good of a game there. He had been hot as of late. He was averaging like 24-10 in Big 12 play in their first 4 or 5 games. Cooled off a little bit there. Keontae Johnson, though, going for 24 along with 8 rebounds. He's been tremendous. In my court report that's going up on Wednesday, I actually have my 5 players for Player of the Year, and the 4 were no brainers. It's Zach Edey than everyone else, right? And then I've got Timmy, Brandon Miller of Alabama on there. I've got Jalen Wilson, who had 38 in a loss, by the way, like one of the best games of his life. He had 38 in this loss, and
it would have been 41, except Bill called the timeout right before he hit the 3.
I know. I'm like, and he self. It was obviously on self, and he. No surprise, he admitted after, like that's on me. And you want that back. The shot.
In fairness, it was like 5 feet behind the 3-point line.
And like the play was not like developing. And
no, he was walking into it, but he was walking into it longer than NBA range 3-pointer. It felt like. Agreed.
So Jalen Wilson is absolutely one of the 5. And then I wound up going for the moment, and it's narrow. Trust me, it was 51-49. I actually put Jaime Jaquez 5th on the list, but I would have, after what happened last night, I would actually have Keontae Johnson as the player in the 6th spot for National Player of the Year or the best second team All-American, however you want to frame that right now. He's averaging 18.7 points, 7.2 boards, 2.4 assists per game, and to help his program get a win like this. And anytime you can beat highly ranked Kansas, I did see on ESPN that Kansas State has now defeated Kansas when ranked number 1 or number 2 6 times. That's more losses that Kansas had against K-State than any other program there. It's just incredible what this program's been able to do. And I can't call this team a for sure Final Four contender, but we have quickly ascended to a plateau here where Kansas State has gone from cool story, nice record, interesting Big 12 team to Jerome Tang has dudes, and they can do real damage when we get to March, both in their own postseason tournament in the Big 12, potentially winning that, to wherever this team winds up getting seeded, no matter the matchup. There's something special going there. And while nothing is guaranteed, yes, you can conceivably see a way where a team that's built like this, if it gets the right kind of matchups with how it is improving on both ends of the floor, it's not elite on offense, not elite on defense, but I could see them making a deep run. I can't call them a for sure Final Four contender yet, but man, they are quickly ascending to that place.
I can. They are a legitimate Final Four contender. When you've won at Texas, at Baylor, and knocked off the reigning national champs, you're a legitimate final. And you don't have all these bad losses. They've got the one not great loss to Butler, but that's it. Everything else is fine. I know they got popped pretty good at TCU, but like a lot of people are going to get popped pretty good at TCU. That's the nature of the Big 12, which, by the way, I saw this last night on how difficult it is to win on the road in the Big 12. And if you want to believe in, and of course you should still believe in Kansas, like it'd be crazy not to, it's Kansas and Bill Self. But if you want to, if you're a Kansas fan and you want to say, hey, it's a road loss in this league, not a big deal. This from David K, of course, from Baylor, tweeted this late last night. Big 12 teams are 2-11 in the past 10 days in road games. It doesn't matter the teams.
Yeah.
They're the 2 wins, both by Baylor, which is why David K tweeted it, of course. But still, the point remains the same. I don't care who you are. Kansas, Kansas State, TCU, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Texas, doesn't matter. It is very hard to win on the road in this league. Like in most other leagues, there are places you can go, and if you're good, you don't have to play well, and you can still win. I really don't think, I might be moving on Texas Tech a little bit, but I really don't think there's a place in the Big 12, regardless of who you are, you can go and feel comfortable you're going to win if you play poorly.
Yeah.
And in most leagues, there's at least a place or two where even if you play poorly, you're going to go win that game if you're good. It's not the case in the Big 12.
It's not, and let's stick right there because Iowa State, I mentioned right at the top of the standings, is able to beat Texas, and another really, really good game. Those were staggered. It was an hour later of a tip than Kansas State, and at the moment, I think I don't have it in front of me, but I looked at it this morning because I'm going to put it in my power rankings on Thursday. Iowa State's got 5 quad 1 wins. I think only Purdue and Kansas have more. I think that's it. There's a number of teams that have 5. I think there are like 7 teams overall, maybe 8 that have 5 or more quad 1 wins. But Iowa State is building out a resume, man. This team has not been a 3-seed or better since 2015, the last year when it was with Fred Hoiberg. TJ Otzelberger, through a year and a half, continued. I mean, last season they did well in the non-conference. They got out to like 11-0 or something like that. And at 17 games through last season, Iowa State was 14-3. 17 games through this season, Iowa State is always also 14-3. But Iowa State got into the tournament because it played in the best league in America a season ago. It didn't lose in the non-conference heading into the start of the new year. And it basically built up enough where it got in as an 11. And then lo and behold, was able to scooch on through and make the Sweet 16. This team's different, man. It's even better. It's more reliable. It's more of a nuisance on defense. And it was a good defensive team a season ago. Just I feel like it's a bit better overall. And offensively, it's unquestionably better. And Gabe Kalsher probably doesn't get enough due for how much he does. But Caleb Grill is a killer. He is a dude. First of all, I assume you were in studio, so you saw the highlights. He hits the big 3 to put it basically as the clincher, and then he turns to the Texas bench and signals timeout. Like that's a boss move. That's a baller move. That's a Gary Parrish approved kind of move there. And he's so unassuming, Caleb Grill. Like I talked to him at PK85 after he had a humongous game earlier this season, and I love these kind of players who, when they're on the floor, they're of one mentality, and then off the floor, it's like, are you the same guy I just saw out there, just absolutely destroying folks? I think it was what he did against Carolina. I think was the big game that he had there. But no shame in the loss for Texas whatsoever. To me, it's way more about Iowa State and the fact that it's 5-1, top of the league. Tang's the front runner for National Coach of the Year. I've also got a list of my top 10 candidates for Coach of the Year at the midway point in today's court report. And Otzelberger's absolutely on that list, man. No doubt about it. They were not. Iowa State, I think, was projected 7th. And again, 8th. Very good Big 12, right? Was it 8th?
8th.
Okay. So you get projected 8th going into a season in the Big 12. That says you're not making the NCAA tournament because historically, like 8 can get there, but in the Big 12, it's 6 or 7, then it gets blurry. So not even thought to be a tournament team, or for sure not, more likely than not. And yet here they are, absolutely streaking toward the NCAA tournament and bullying teams. Iowa State looks like hell to prepare for and agonizing to face. It'll take some more L's. I know that's going to come, but Otzelberger's done a wonderful job, and it was a really good night for the Big 12. Just the competition, the game styles, different kind of stars showing up, and a reminder of why this league is comfortably the best in the country.
Yeah, if not for Kansas State, we would spend podcast after podcast going, Iowa State was picked 8th in the Big 12 and now tied for 1st. but like that doesn't sound as awesome as Kansas State was picked last in the Big 12 and is now tied for first. But both stories are incredible. It's a first-year coach at KSU and a second-year coach at ISU, and it's especially impressive for TJ because I guess if you want to, you can write off 1 year to luck, good fortune, whatever. But when you do this 2 years in a row, like when you dramatically overachieve 2 years in a row, that suggests there's some substance to what you're doing. And I'm with you. There's some substance at Iowa State. This isn't just a team picked 8th off to a nice start. You know, we're in middle of January. There's no nice starts anymore. We're in league play. Like if you're good, you're good. And Iowa State is undeniably good. Updated top 25 and 1. I've got Kansas State 6, Kansas 7, Iowa State 8. So those 3 teams in the Big 12, I've got them back to back tied atop the Big 12 standings. And ultimately, I do think that race is probably going to come down to the last 2 weeks of the season, maybe even the last week of the season. Not to put a poll up. So let me ask you right now, January 18th, who wins the Big 12?
You know what I have to do. We have to go. It has to be Kansas. Now, Baylor has won and finished atop the league 2 times in the past 3 seasons or whatnot. I have to go Kansas until proven otherwise, because still, even in defeat, Kansas could have won. No, Kansas could have won that game unquestionably. With Jalen Wilson ascending to like a top 3 player in the country, KJ Adams is awesome, and DeJuan Harris is such a heady point guard. I until proven otherwise, I have to say Kansas, and I imagine you're going to agree with me.
Yeah, it's the only smart answer. Like, I think Iowa State is legitimately good. I think Kansas State is a real Final Four contender because it's not just the resume. They got real players. Like Bill Self made this point. We made this point 2 weeks ago, and Bill Self made the point earlier this week. Like they got real guys. Kente Johnson was the preseason SEC Player of the Year. Marquise Noel is one of the best, little point guards in the country. Desi Sills started for an Elite 8 team at Arkansas. Like these are real players. This isn't some scrappy bunch of guys that have really come together. I mean, that's true. They have come together, but there's real high level college basketball talent there. And so like if you told me right now Kansas State's going to be in Houston with us, it wouldn't surprise me at all. But I still believe that when it all shakes out, and keep in mind, Kansas State's got to return this game to Kansas. When this all shakes out, I think Kansas is at the very least sharing the Big 12 title and possibly winning it outright. Let's move on.